We're talking about the Washington Commanders on the Ourlads Football Network, Ourlads Football YouTube channel. And that means David Harrison is joining us from the Locked On Commanders podcast. How's it going, David?
Oh, I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing good. This is a great time of year to be a football fan, that's for sure, with the college football playoffs finally getting underway for the first time ever for a 12-team playoff on Friday. The NFL playoffs are only a month away. I mean, this is it if you're a football fan, right?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of good things going on around the game of football and exciting times. Like you said, college football playoffs, playoff pushes going on for teams around the National Football League. It's what we are waiting for all year long.
Sorry about the Army-Navy game, though.
That's okay. It's all right.
Well, they won their.
I don't get too wrapped up around any of those games. It's meant to be enjoyed. So you enjoy it. Once it's over, if you didn't go your way, you just move on with your life.
That's it. You got the AAC title anyway. All right. So let's talk about this Washington Commanders team. Beginning of the season, we talked about the luck that Washington had for having the Chicago Bears select Caleb Williams first. Everybody at Ourlads had Daniels as the top quarterback, and it certainly seems so far the way it's working out this season, at least for Washington. They can't be more pleased with everything the way it's looking for Daniels, and hopefully him being the quarterback that they've been waiting for here for a very long time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Jayden has been everything that you expected him to be and more, and he just clearly looks like a guy who's on a trajectory that is going to be a very good one for the Washington Commanders for years to come, not just from a physical talent standpoint, but from a personality standpoint, locker room leadership, all of it. It really is just, it's been a lot of fun to watch, Jayden Daniels just kind of get his feet wet here in the National Football League.
Yeah. What now, in order for the Commanders, though, to take that next step, you're just taking a look at the roster right now, the depth chart, and I'll post it up here. There seems to be a little bit more infusion of skill position players on offense. I mean, it looks like Brian Robinson is the real deal, of course, and Terry McLaurin. But besides that, and then look, Zach Ertz has been a great veteran to help out. Is that really the obvious need for this offense to take that next step to supply Jayden with a couple of more dangerous weapons?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you love what Noah Brown was doing, before he went down with his kidney injury, unfortunately. But even with Noah Brown, like, he's a solid number 2 guy. But as far as like how you look at the ceiling for the offense with Noah Brown as your second option, I think that most people would agree that there's room for improvement there, beside Terry McLaurin. And then even into the slot, you like Luke McCaffrey and his size, and certainly some of the ability that he brings, the athleticism, but he's not really a quick twitch guy. He's not a top speed guy. So this offense is kind of missing a little bit of length in the offense without Noah Brown, and then missing a little bit of speed out there. Jamison Crowder able to come back last week against the New Orleans Saints is big. He's a little bit faster, a little bit more twitched up, but still not that top end, right? Athleticism, short area, or deep speed type of guy. So you want to see him get a little bit better there. Zach Ertz, is, like you said, has been a solid veteran, but the long-term upside for him is obviously not going to be there. So it's going to be really interesting to see where Ben Sinnott falls. He was kind of brought in to be that Kyle Juszczyk type of player, with Adam Peters coming from San Francisco, understanding the value in a guy like that. We haven't really been able to see him get a whole lot of run just because of the presence of Zach Ertz and John Bates, who's been a very solid number 2 now for a couple years. But, with Zach Ertz potentially missing this coming week's game with a concussion, we'll see how that actually turns out. It'll be interesting to observe that. But Ben Sinnott may be able to get some opportunity to maybe get a little bit more work in and start to show flashes there. But either way, whether it's Ben Sinnott or a player to be named later, you certainly like to see this team get some other pieces around Jayden Daniels. And, Austin Eckler, even as the veteran number 2 running back, is very good, very solid. But how much longer he has in the league is also to be questioned. So you need to see the team kind of figure out their long-term plan there as well.
And speaking of rookies, Washington has had several, besides Daniels, make an impact, and that includes Brandon Coleman. the left tackle.
Yeah.
So when was it that Coleman became the full-time starter, and when did you, watching the team play, when did you start to believe that, hey, maybe they got something here?
Yeah, it's depends on who you ask and how you look at it. Brandon Coleman was the quote unquote starting left tackle on the depth chart in training camp. When the first unofficial depth chart came out, Brandon Coleman was the number one left tackle on the depth chart. However, some injuries took him out of some preseason action, took him out of training camp a little bit. And when the season started, it was basically Cornelius Lucas starting, but then Brandon Coleman would come in and it would kind of rotate, a drive here, a drive there. And then I think it was about week 3 or 4, maybe even a little bit later than that, the Brandon Coleman really became kind of that full-time guy. Cornelius Lucas got injured for a little while, so that kind of helped that. And, Brandon has looked solid really since the first time you got to see him in one-on-ones, right? And that's kind of the trick here is during the mini camps and the beginning part of training camp, you don't get to see these guys go fully at each other, and you don't get to see them with the pads on. But once the pads came on, you got to see him go one-on-one against pass rushers doing his thing. You really kind of saw that upside and that ability. And then as he was able to get into some more reps again, like I said, he was injured for a good stretch of training camp. But the more you saw him, the more you kind of saw the upside in him, and he's had some really good moments and some really good games. Helped pitch a shutout against Myles Garrett, but there's also been opportunities where you see that he's a rookie. I think the future for Brandon Coleman, we'll see how the draft board falls and free agency market goes this offseason. But I think most people feel like most likely what's going to happen is this team is going to target a blue chip left tackle in the offseason, whether it be through free agency or the NFL draft, and then probably move Brandon Coleman to right tackle as early as next season. And that's probably where the future lies for him. But he's done that's not to say he hasn't done a good job there. It's just obviously that's, outside the quarterback, to a lot of people, that's the second most important position on the field when you're protecting that quarterback's, blind side. So I think that's probably what the future holds for Brandon.
And you think they also need to address like the guard position, or are they comfortable with the tandem, the veteran tandem they have right now for the next couple of years? Would they prefer to have Allegretti as a swing? Where do you think the future lies inside?
Yeah, Sam Cosmi is a solid piece, Pro Bowl caliber type of offensive lineman. Nick Allegretti certainly has his upside as well. I think he's a very solid guy, but I wouldn't be surprised in the way that this coaching staff preaches competition. Like, I don't think Nick Allegretti has established himself to the point where it's, you can't replace him. Like, he's not an untouchable type of guy. So I wouldn't be surprised, again, depending on how free agent market looks, depending on how draft boards fall, like if they have the opportunity and they think there's a guy that can come in and compete with Nick Allegretti to take that starting job, then I wouldn't be surprised to see that happening. Outside of that, Tyler Biadasz is pretty solidified in there. So really going into next offseason, it's kind of the right tackle position via the movement of Brandon Coleman. So maybe you call it the left tackle position and then the left guard position. Outside of that, barring any unforeseen circumstances, I think you're pretty set up front as far as a group that you want to put together and then develop into the future.
All right. And as far as the rest of the season goes regarding the offense, how far can they go with this group? And is there anybody specifically or anything that they specifically need to do to improve in order to make a dent, get to the playoffs, win a playoff game?
Yeah, I mean, I think, right now they're top 5 in scoring, points per game and all that stuff. And I think that really kind of just shows how much they've been able to bring this group together, the job that Cliff Kingsbury has done. Obviously, there's a little bit of a rough stretch during their 3-game losing streak about a month ago that, the offense wasn't necessarily clicking all that much. They're still having moments here and there. But, when you look at what they were able to do against Tennessee Titans, put up 40-plus points. And I understand the Titans are not exactly, the gold standard of NFL franchises right now, but still an NFL team. So it's still, impressive to put 40 points up on any NFL team, even ones that are towards kind of the bottom of the league. And then the New Orleans Saints game, the highlights and the box score is going to tell you 20-19, not a very impressive performance overall, but the game flow will tell you that really the Washington Commanders and Cliff Kingsbury specifically put his team in position to score 37 points against the New Orleans Saints, who have been giving up about 22.6 points per game. So again, a very strong outing from a game script, game plan, play calling aspect. There were some execution issues that obviously they need to get put together, and really execution issues, especially Jayden Daniels and Terry McLaurin on the deep ball. Never have I ever until week 15, seen Jayden Daniels and Terry McLaurin miss on 3 consecutive deep balls. Like, that's not something that's going to happen, that's ever happened before. It's not something that's going to happen. I would be surprised if it ever happened again. So those types of things obviously take points off the board, and then a missed field goal late in the game. So I look at it like Cliff Kingsbury drew up a 37-point game plan. The players executed to the point where they got 20 points. So obviously those things need to marry up, and you want to see them get better there. But as you're scoring 40, 35, being in the position to put up that type of production, you definitely feel good about what you can do moving forward.
Which one of those receivers do you think has the best chance of helping McLaurin down the stretch, if you had to pick one?
I mean, personally, I probably think, the combination of Olamide Zaccheaus and Jamison Crowder probably provides a little bit more explosive ability. Not so much deep ball wise, because neither of those guys are really known as, go route, deep corner route, post route type of receiver. Both of those guys are more short yardage area type of guys. But if you can get them into space and they can make a guy miss, they can certainly get some chunk plays. And then you can use those shorter passes and route combinations to open up some things for Terry McLaurin deeper down the field. If you can get those things to be executed properly. I think Dyami Brown, he got the majority of the reps to replace Noah Brown in New Orleans. I think Dyami Brown probably gets the best opportunity to do it, and he certainly provides a little bit of a deep ball ability as well. So there is that part of it. But I think overall, when I just look at this offense, I look what Jane Daniels does really well. I think that the quick passing game that sets up that deeper passing game is probably the way to go. And for that, Olamide Zaccheaus and Jamison Crowder really help out the most.
Is Brian? Do the Commanders feel like Brian Robinson is definitely their guy? That he's the guy that's going to be here for as long as we can have him here? And if so, do they feel like they're eventually going to need someone else to complement Brian? Or you think they're okay, mixing and matching with some of the veterans like a McNichols or an Eckler, and that's really far from an issue, far from a position of need that they're going to be looking at down the road?
I think running back is always a position in need. The position itself is one that's not known for longevity. And Brian Robinson Jr., for as good as he is, he's had a right knee injury, had a right hamstring injury, and a right ankle injury all this season alone. You know what I mean? And it just kind of shows you the punishment that position really goes through. And this team clearly wants this to be a complementary system. Like it was supposed to be Brian Robinson Jr. and Austin Eckler together, Jeremy McNichols kind of sprinkled in there. But as injuries have taken their toll, sometimes Austin Eckler's had to be the primary since Austin suffered his concussion that's taken him out. Jeremy has had to come in against the Saints. It was basically the B-Rob show. Jeremy McNichols and Chris Rodriguez Jr. combined for 3 carries, while Brian Robinson Jr. got, I think, about 26, 27 touches total. I don't know that that's really sustainable. I think that's a really good way to just kind of cruise for your running back to get injured in a critical time. And then you're going to end up having to deal with, your third and your fourth running backs as now your number 1 and your number 2. So we'll see how they figure that out moving forward. There were some, wonderment, I would say, not even rumors, if the Washington Commanders might, go after Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but obviously that's not going to be a thing. And I don't know that necessarily would have been a fit anyway. But we'll see what they do with the running back position. But as far as like future moves are concerned, I'm a believer that every year in the NFL, teams should either draft a running back, or if you feel good about your running back room, at least go into the undrafted free agent pool and try to find a hidden gem somewhere. They did go get Michael Wiley out of USC, and he's on the practice squad, and he's got a little bit of shiftiness to him. Hasn't been on the active roster for a game, hasn't been elevated for a game yet this season, but he's got a little bit of shiftiness to him and certainly some potential. So we'll see how he develops. But Brian Robinson Jr. is going to be going into a contract year next year. Austin Eckler, again, another year older. 2 concussions this year. The last one, obviously, is the most serious one. It's caused him to miss multiple weeks. So we'll see if he can come back from that and what his future looks like, post that. Jeremy McNichols has certainly had moments, but he kind of is who he is. He's a journeyman backup role player, and there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. But if you're a team that wants to rely on your running back stable the way that this Commanders team does, he's just not one of those guys that you're going to make part of your feature plan. So, whether they decide to add to that room with a 3rd, 4th round pick, whether they decide to go the free agent route or the UDFA route again and bring back Austin Eckler, there's a lot of options out there. And ultimately, that's what every GM in the NFL wants, is optionality, as they call it. So, that's a good position to be in. But I think you look forward to B-Rob at least being the primary guy this year into next year, as long as he's healthy. And then, from there, running back contracts are always really tricky. You know what I mean? It's a little bit of combination of how important you are, how much you want, and what the market looks like. And, every offseason feels like the top running backs in the league kind of point out how unappreciated the position really is. And, certainly guys like Saquon Barkley are giving some credence to why you should go out there and do that. But at the same time, you got Derrick Henry in Baltimore that was supposed to make the Baltimore Ravens the most dangerous team in the NFL. And they're kind of sitting there, where are they third? I think they're 3rd seed in the AFC right now. So hasn't really worked out as powerful as everybody thought it might, and that kind of drives the market down a little bit.
Yeah, I think we are starting to see a little bit more appreciation for that position, though. And this is a pretty good class coming up of running backs, too. So, yeah, you do get the feeling that, like anything, it comes in waves. And I think we're going to start heading back to the understanding of how important the running game is to any offense. So, which is great for, I don't want to call us purists, but just football fans. I mean, we're not in the Arena Football League here. So, all right, defensively. What do the Commanders? What is their biggest weakness?
That's tricky. I would say their biggest weakness, personally, is probably it's statistically it's run defense, right? Which starts kind of inside. But I would say it's just that front four. Like, let's just call it the front four overall. Cleveland Farrell on one side for starters, he's been dealing with injuries pretty much all season long. But he's always kind of been, I know the Raiders, when they drafted him, expected him to develop as a pass rusher, become kind of this multi-tool set skill guy, and it just kind of never really, came to fruition. He's basically more of a run stopper, solid tackler, not much of a pass rusher, even though to begin the season, honestly, he led the team in sacks for the first few weeks. Daron Payne had a really good contract year, got his new contract, has not really exploded on the scene since then. So a lot of Commanders fans are a little disappointed with that. He's a Ron Rivera era guy, and Adam Peters and Dan Quinn continue to kind of gently shuffle Ron Rivera era guys out the building. So we'll see where that comes in. Johnny Newton has certainly shown a lot of potential this season, and then Phidarian Mathis, who was a second round draft pick of Ron Rivera's, has shown some spark, but really was not very good in the run defense game. He's been a healthy inactive for the last 2 games against Tennessee Titans and the New Orleans Saints. And, with Jonathan Allen having his window to return from IR opening up today on Wednesday, Phidarian may find himself out of a job fairly soon. So we'll see how that whole thing develops. And Dorrance Armstrong, I think, has been very effective. His sack numbers aren't through the roof, but he's certainly, had an impact getting pressure, funneling quarterbacks and running backs into other people and helping them make plays. Guys like Dante Fowler Jr., who's having a career year, Frankie Louvu, who's having a Pro Bowl caliber season, as well as a pass rushing linebacker. So, there's some good there, but there's also, again, kind of looking at the wide receiver group, like you like what you have, but you obviously see the room to improve there. And linebacker position, I mean, Bobby Wagner's not, his NFL career is coming to an end sooner rather than later. When that is, I don't know. But I'm pretty sure this team is going to be happy to bring him back on year-to-year contracts as long as he's willing to. Frankie Louvu has been a stud, so there's no concerns there. But yeah, you look at that front four, and then even into the front 7, there's obviously some areas where you need to shore up or try to find like your ace at those positions.
So run defense, that's the biggest issue at this point. Is there any and again, you mentioned Louvu and he's having a good season. And Fowler, like you said, both of them having excellent seasons, but that's also something that, as you said, you need a premium guy at each spot. And first of all, do you think Newton is considered? Do they consider Newton to be a premium guy inside?
I mean, I think he's got premium upside, right? But like as of today, like is he a premium defense tackle in the NFL? No, you know what I mean? But I don't think it necessarily would be fair if anybody out there were trying to expect him to be. He's a second round pick. Sure, he had some first round buzz. He had the foot injury that he had surgery on during the draft process. Gets to Ashburn, gets to the Washington Commanders, ends up with another foot injury that he's got to have surgery on. So those things, certainly don't help a rookie trying to get better and trying to do those things. And like I said, he's certainly flashed in areas, and you see that upside. But any 4-man front, those defensive tackles, like you love to have an Aaron Donald and all that stuff, but that's just not realistic, right? Like that's why those guys are so well received and so celebrated, is because they're not the norm. So that's not the standard you compare everybody to. But I think Johnny Newton's certainly a potential to be a solid part of any interior duo. The question is, whether that other partner is Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen in the future, or somebody else.
Okay. And then definitely getting like a number 1 edge rusher up front. That's definitely going to be a priority, I would assume, a young kid, something like that. What about the pass defense? You talked about the run defense being a little bit of an issue. How's the pass defense been this year?
I mean, with Marshawn Lattimore, arriving and finally being able to get on the field against the New Orleans Saints, like you just see what his effect is, right? You played 29 coverage snaps against the New Orleans Saints. It wasn't targeted once, and I don't know if the Spencer Rattler or Jake Haener looked at him once. Like didn't even go through their progression towards number 23. So that kind of shows you. And then Mikey Sanders still the slot defender turned perimeter defender for the Commanders has just been outstanding. I mean, that
Oh
duo
yeah.
of Marshawn Lattimore and Mikey Sanders. So you got a Buckeye on one side, a Wolverine on the other side, two rivals who are playing really well together. And again, it's only been one game so far, but so far so good. We'll see what happens against Philadelphia Eagles because you kind of look at that Marshawn Lattimore versus AJ Brown, Mikey Sanders still versus Devontae Smith. Like if that's the matchups you're getting all night, that's it's going to be one heck of a battle to watch out there. And then in the slot, no Igbenogany. I think it's certainly been serviceable. I don't like he's a first round bust if you ask any Miami Dolphins fan, and that's certainly fair. But I think he's been very serviceable in the slot for the Washington Commanders this year. Could you get better? Absolutely, you could. Benjamin St-Juste was the guy starting until Marshawn Lattimore got the opportunity to get back healthy and get on the field. And in the first game with Marshawn Lattimore on the field, not only did Benjamin St-Juste go to the bench, but he actually had fewer defensive reps than Michael Davis, who was backing up Benjamin St-Juste before Marshawn got on the field. So that's how far Ben has now kind of fallen off. So he's another guy, Ron Rivera era guy, who may be on his way out sooner rather than later. But you like the beginning, you like the top coverage, the depth. Obviously, there's something to be desired there, but you can't, so fifth round, cornerback, I think certainly is a realistic possibility. If there's an elite slot defender out there available on day 2, maybe they go that direction to pair with Mikey and Marshawn. But already as it is, like this defense, you even get into the other DBs, Jeremy Chin and Quan Martin and Percy Butler, who's gotten a good amount of defensive reps. They're one of the better defenses this year in preventing explosive passing plays. And so while, some of the PFF grades or, QBRs allowed against and all that stuff may not be, top of the line overall as a unit, not allowing explosive pass plays is how you force offenses to stretch drives out and you open the opportunity for those quarterbacks to make mistakes.
Has Mike been playing nickel and outside, or has he been, what has he been playing mostly?
Yeah, Mikey's outside. He started off inside.
Oh, it's outside, really?
And
okay.
that was the expectation, is that he would just be outside. But yeah, or inside, but he's moved outside and he's done a really great job. And some of the question was when Marshawn got traded for, is like, okay, is it gonna be Marshawn, Ben, and then Mikey moves back inside? But look, at the same time, like there's been a comment here or there. I mean, it's been, about a month now since Joe Witt Jr. kind of said, the intention is to move him back inside eventually at some point, whether that be this season or next season. But, look, the better Mikey Sanders still does outside, the harder it's going to be for any defense coordinator moving back inside. And we know that Mikey loves playing outside. So, I think most likely if I had to predict right now, I would probably say your most likely course of action is Marshawn and Mikey outside, and then Noah probably returns, but they might go, take a flyer on a young kid in the draft and see if they can't develop somebody behind him to maybe eventually take over inside.
Okay, Chin. So this was a mystery in Carolina, what was going on with this kid after such a great start to his career. So it's always nice to see a player get a new home and somebody can try to fix him. And it certainly has seemed that's the case. What has he done well with this unit?
Yeah, I mean, he's your strong safety or he's your star, right? He's your guy that he's got your hybrid safety linebacker that comes down into the box and can cover tight ends. You don't really like him against wide receivers if you can prevent it. You don't like him against, the Alvin Kamara type of running backs if you can prevent it. But he's serviceable enough to go up against most tight ends. I wouldn't put him against Travis Kelce, but you can put him potentially against even say like a Mark Andrews, and he can at least hold his own, right? The problem with him has always been coverage. The Carolina Panthers try to turn him into a strong safety that covers first, and then comes down to help the run defense second. And that's not his game. In fact, if you watch that New Orleans Saints game, unfortunately, the play that he actually got knocked out on, where he suffered his concussion, he actually has just a really bad coverage rep and ends up giving up a big play. And he's trying to pursue the play from the backside, chasing down the guy he was supposed to be covering, and ends up getting blasted by Derek Forrest, his own teammate, and gets knocked out of the game with a concussion. So it's unfortunate. Obviously, you don't want to have that result, but it's just kind of an illustration of Jeremy Chin's probably the weakest part of his game is pass coverage. He's definitely more of a if you want him in pass coverage, he's an umbrella guy that runs downhill and levels a hit on somebody, kind of like Steve Atwater, his Hall of Fame uncle. It's not all that dissimilar. But that type of player fits this defense because they use, in Dallas, it was Javon Curse. He was their star, safety hybrid linebacker type of player. In Washington's Jeremy Chin. He fits that role. But, offenses also know, like, if we can get you in man coverage, we also know you're not very strong at that.
Okay, so let's talk about some of these injuries. You've already mentioned some of them. First of all, let's talk about the guys who were out on injured reserve, because there are several key guys. So you mentioned Noah Brown, Eckler, and Siebert, also Jonathan Allen. Out of those, First of all, is Brown out for the year?
Noah Brown, I mean, unofficially, the expectation he's going to be out for the year, but like officially, it's kind of like we'll see how it goes type of situation.
Who do you think has so who are they hoping and likely to get back?
Yeah, John Allen. I mean, he just had his 21-day window to open or to return opened up today. He was on the practice field today. Was able to practice for the team for the first time, or with the team for the first time since tearing that pec. It was limited classification for his participation. I don't know if I fully expect him to return this weekend against the Eagles. Obviously, they believe that would be a really good boost for them, especially going up against Saquon Barkley for the second time. And if John has anything to do about it or to do for it, he's going to be back out there. I'm going to say on my show and all week, like, it's more realistic to expect him back maybe as early as next week against the Atlanta Falcons, another run heavy team that might get even run heavier with Michael Penix Jr. getting in the mix. But if he can come back this week, fantastic. Next week, that's fine too. Because they've got Carl Davis, a practice squad elevation guy. They've elevated him twice, so they can elevate him one more time before they have to add him to the active roster. So we'll see how that kind of goes. But yeah, his window has already been activated, so he's obviously the most likely to come back. I wouldn't expect Colson Yankoff back. Austin Seibert, he's kind of a mystery there. Kaz Allen just went on IR, so he's obviously done for at least the regular season, and he's a practice squad guy who hasn't been elevated during the regular season at all. So not much to worry about there. And Austin, Austin Eckler, that concussion was really bad. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to put any expectation on it. That he would love to come back if he could. And then Noah Brown again. It's regular season, don't expect Noah Brown. Now playoffs, if they can get in the playoffs and get to the wild card round, maybe if they can get to the divisional round, obviously every week you go further in the playoffs, the chances of him being able to come back go up.
Okay. What happened in that first matchup? Because they gave up a ton of yards to Barkley. And as we saw last week, the remedy to beat the Eagles, and I'm not saying every team's got the players, the talent, but the remedy is you got to start Barkley. If you could start Barkley, you're going to have a shot. Washington couldn't do that the first time. Is there do you have any hope or indication that leads you to believe that Washington will be able to stop him this time around?
Yeah, because they did stop him for 3.5 quarters. The first time they matched up, they stopped him for 3.5 quarters. They actually took a 4-point lead into the fourth quarter in Philadelphia on Thursday Night Football. The unfortunate part is that Saquon Barkley had a touchdown run of 39 yards in the fourth quarter and a touchdown run of 23 yards in the fourth quarter. And that is not how you play fourth quarter defense to stop a game. But, Dan Quinn said it himself on Wednesday, like the greatest players in the NFL history, they turn it on the most in the fourth quarter, right? They find a way to close out those games. And that's what Saquon Barkley does for you, whether it be, your defense is fatigued, which certainly that was an impact in that Thursday night game. The Washington Commanders offense wasn't able to sustain a lot of drives, especially in the second half. And just, every time the defense got back on the field, you just watch them get more and more tired. I remember watching one play before one of those touchdown runs where Frankie Louvu was helping chase down a play. And after the play was over, man, he just laid on the field and just caught his breath for a second. And I'm just looking at it, and Frankie Louvu's that Tasmanian devil type of guy who never stops spinning. So for him to be laying on the ground trying to catch his breath a little bit before getting up to take the next rep, that shows you how much this defense was just really gassed on that night. And so look, this is a winnable game. The Washington Commanders absolutely can defeat the Philadelphia Eagles. They can contain Saquon Barkley. It's not the question of whether they can. It's a question of whether or not they will. Either way, Philadelphia Eagles, they're one win away from clinching the NFC East. You know what I mean? If they they've got the 3 NFC East games. They have the Commanders, then they got the Cowboys, and they got the Giants. They only got to win one of them. Doesn't matter which one they win. They win one, and they're the division champs. So I think you're pretty safe to start printing the Philadelphia Eagles NFC East division champion shirts if you want to. right now. But the Washington, if they can prevent the Eagles from doing it for at least one more week, prevent the Eagles from celebrating doing so on their home field, that'll certainly make them feel good. And then, the Commanders do have a playoff clinching scenario if they win and the Falcons lose to the New York Giants, which don't know how likely that is, but at the same time, any given Sunday.
Sure.
And then either the Rams or the Seahawks lose, which the Seahawks are facing the Vikings. That's probably the most likely one. The Rams are facing the Jets, but look, the Jets. I mean, that Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams connection has been getting better, right? So those, and it's in New York, so it's a long trip for the Rams. The weather's going to be bad, so don't count them out either. So the Washington Commanders have a path to clinch a playoff berth this year. If they lose, they can't clinch a playoff spot, so it doesn't matter. But certainly this is a game where I understand the Eagles are favored. I understand why they're favored, but the Commanders absolutely have the horses to get a win. Again, it's going to just boil down to execution, which is what you want in an NFL game. You don't want it to be such a talent mismatch that you're just like, okay, we know what's going to happen. It's just a matter of when it happens. You want it to be a game where if both these sides execute, you're going to have a very competitive matchup.
And with Daniels now, and of course the Eagles look like they're always going to be around with that front office, but that these two teams are the most likely organizations in the East to have success for the foreseeable future. So you got to start winning these games against that other team that could be your big rival here out of the other rivals. So we understand how important that is. What happened the first time around with the offense? Daniel's stats weren't very good. McLaurin had one catch. What do you remember about that game that they just weren't able to click offensively?
Philadelphia Eagles defensive front just dominated. I mean, they were able to basically play with their front four and not a whole lot else, rushing the quarterback, stopping the run game. And what that allowed them to do was put what I've referred to as a Bermuda Triangle of defense around Terry McLaurin. Like every single snap, Terry McLaurin went out there to run a route. He had a guy deep and inside of him, a guy deep and outside of him, and a guy underneath him. There was just nothing. I will say that Cliff Kingsbury didn't do enough, in my opinion, to counter that throughout the night, and never really tried to change that. So certainly that was a problem. Now, since then, we've seen Cliff Kingsbury's offense kind of take another step forward. So, if we continue to see some of that creativity against the Eagles, then that should be a difference maker. But look, if the Washington Commanders can't get, this offense starts and ends with Brian Robinson. Like Jaden Daniels is amazing, but this is a run first team and it's a power run first team, which is Brian Robinson Jr. Last time these two teams saw each other, the Philadelphia Eagles didn't stack the box against the Washington Commanders a single rep. There was not a single snap where the Philadelphia Eagles had to stack the box against Washington Commanders. That is a huge problem when you only have one true blue talented wide receiver and you have a mobile quarterback who needs to be able to get to the edge, because if that defense is not stacking the box, they're not contained within the tackles, and there's no space for Jaden Daniels to run. So this week, the Washington Commanders got to make the Eagles respect them. You know what I mean? And Vic Fangio, I don't see Vic Fangio coming out and saying, look, we didn't stack the box once last time, and we had all kinds of success in the world, and we're able to keep our team in the game long enough for Saquon to get humming. There's no reason for him to change that. So unless the Commanders force Vic to stack the box, he's not going to stack the box. And the way you force him to do it is take advantage by running the ball and running it successfully. When Brian Robinson Jr. runs the ball for more than 4 yards per carry, the Washington Commanders are undefeated. When he runs for less than 4 yards per carry, as of this last weekend, because Brian Robinson ran for, I think, 3.6 yards against the New Orleans Saints, they're a break even. You know what I mean? And until this last weekend, they had a losing record. So it shows you how impactful getting that power run game going is. And against the Philadelphia Eagles, specifically with that front four, it's even more crucial because, I mean, if you don't make them do it, they're going to have 7 dudes behind the, off the line of scrimmage, just covering everything. And it's just not going to be a recipe for success.
Speaking of the coaching staff, of course, you're one. So how do you think Dunn, Quinn, and even Kingsbury? Because there's people all of a sudden now that are back on the, coaching searches, head coaching. Should Cliff Kingsbury get an interview and go here, there, or the other? So what do you think about that? What do you think about how Quinn's done and Cliff?
Yeah, I mean, Dan's been great. DQ has been great. He's the great thing about Dan Quinn is he preaches his message internally. He tells us what he preaches externally. And then you go out on the field, you go in the locker room, you go into whatever arena you're in and however you can observe this team and you see it in action. It's one thing to hear leaders talk about what they're doing and talk about what they want and talk about what they're instilling. And then it's another to go out there and see them actually do it. And it's really funny because it's a week-to-week basis thing. We talk to players in the locker room, and they'll all have very similar messages. Like, you'll talk to an offensive tackle, and there's buzzwords that they use in their interview. And then you go to talk to the safety, and they use the same buzzwords. Then you go talk to this running back, and they use the same buzzwords. And it's not a buzzword that the coach used with you. So it's something that is being said in closed-door meetings, and it's really resonating with the players. And that's what Dan Quinn really brings to this team. Joe Witt Jr., I think, has done a really good job with what he has. And we talked about all the deficiencies, all the areas this defense can get better. And, when you talk about defense, it really is 11 men working as one. So the more holes you have on that side of the ball, the harder it is to really coordinate a fully effective defense. And, not the best defense in the National Football League, but the fact that in these games where they do have struggle sometimes getting their offense going, like the last time they faced the Philadelphia Eagles, again, the Commanders go into the fourth quarter with a 4-point lead, despite the struggles that they had getting Terry McLaurin going, despite the struggles they had running the ball. So it really shows you how much the defense was able to stand up against one of the better teams in the NFC and allow that offense time to try to get going. I think it's very impressive for Joe Witt Jr.'s first year as a full-fledged defense coordinator. And then Cliff, during that losing streak, really not the first game, the Pittsburgh Steelers game, I thought he called a pretty good game. There were some drop passes. There were some things execution-wise that didn't help him out. Now, the Eagles game and the Cowboys game that followed, that's where I think Cliff took some well-deserved criticism. But then he comes out against the Titans and, again, draws up a lot of creativity. They put 40 points up. They get the bye week, come out against the New Orleans Saints, more creativity. Again, the opportunity for his offense to put up 37 points against the New Orleans Saints, 15 points more than they're giving up on their season average. So I think Cliff has done a very good job. He's absolutely going to get head coaching interviews. I mean, he got head coaching interviews, coming to last offseason. He's going to get opportunities this season. And I think he deserves them. I don't know that he's going to take one, or take a job if he's offered one, but I think he certainly has deserved the opportunity to go back into the interview pool at least.
What do you think about anybody that is whether you can call it criticism or just pointing out the fact that the schedule-wise that Washington, it's nice that they've beaten a lot of bad teams, and that's just what their schedule gave them, but they haven't been able to beat the good teams yet.
I mean, listen, these teams don't make their own schedules. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't college football where the Washington Commanders can choose to go face the Chiefs and choose to go face the Ravens and choose to go face so I don't try to criticize any team for the schedule that they have. Now, if you want to talk about, how much does their hype deserve because of the schedule they're facing, okay, we can get into that conversation. But anybody who wants to have the conversation about the Washington Commanders, I'll remind them that the Detroit Lions, Minnesota Vikings, and Green Bay Packers, who are in the quote unquote best division in football, all three have double-digit wins this season. All three of them face the AFC South and the NFC West, who are two of the worst divisions in football this year. So, the conversation can go across the board to a lot of different places. But at the end of the day, the Washington Commanders have 9 wins. They're on the verge of clinching a playoff spot. The Lions, Packers, and Vikings have double-digit wins. Those players deserve the credit for earning those wins, no matter who's on their schedule. So I don't get too into those conversations. At the end of the day, if you think the Washington Commanders aren't as good as their record says they are because of their schedule, again, like I said, I'll point out to you that the Vikings and Packers and Lions don't have much of a stronger, road to hoe. Their strength of schedule will look a lot better because they're playing each other, each of which also played the AFC South and the NFC. Well, you know what I mean? Like, those win values can get
I
a
feel
little
the same
bit
way about the
there.
SEC in college football. Every
Right.
time they talk about the rankings. Yeah.
In my opinion, if you want to talk about quality wins in the NFL, you've got to wipe the division games off the board because every division game is tough no matter what division you're in. So you have to take those games off the board and then look at who they're playing outside of there. And again, I hate to harp on this division too much, but you look at the Lions and their most quality win is maybe the Los Angeles Rams. The Minnesota Vikings, their quality win is the Seattle Seahawks. And these aren't teams that people are expecting to be serious contenders for the Lombardi Trophy this year. So I don't want to detract from teams because of that. But I think it's kind of a cherry-picked argument. It's I didn't expect the Washington Commanders to win more than 6 games. Now that they have, I want to point out their schedule. I thought the Detroit Lions were going to be amazing early in the season. Now that they've been amazing and they're the number 1 team in the NFC, I'm not going to point out their schedule. It is what we do. It's kind of a lazy argument because it's nothing that they can control.
What do you think about if there are some potential doubters out there who are thinking about, maybe I like Washington, and I'm thinking of taking them this week against the Eagles, and then they have that in their ear. Well, they haven't beaten any of the top teams yet. What do you think about Washington's chances this week? considering, like you said, everything that happened in the previous matchup, where they stand right now.
I mean, the first step to beating any good team is competing against the good teams, and they competed well against Tampa Bay Buccaneers, considering where they were as a team. You know what I mean? They lost by multiple scores, but I think considering where they were as a team, Jaden Daniels' NFL debut, all those things, I think you like what they were able to do there. They competed against the Baltimore Ravens. They competed against Philadelphia Eagles. They competed against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and in a lot of ways, you know, they're one play away or one score away from beating all of those teams. Again, you know, the Commanders go into the fourth quarter with a 4-point lead against Philadelphia Eagles. That's not an easy thing to do. The Pittsburgh Steelers, that's the play where Zach Ertz gets spotted about half an inch short of first down in field goal range, where that field goal gives them a victory. And I've long made the statement that if that ball gets spotted in favor of Washington instead of where it got spotted, they win that game. And now we're talking about what they beat in the AFC North division leader. You know, look, they beat the Cincinnati Bengals back when everybody still thought the Cincinnati Bengals were going to get everything right. And, you know, again, it's kind of one of those things where now everybody's like, oh, hey, the Cincinnati Bengals aren't very good. Back then it was, oh, well, they're going to do very, very well. So, you know, it's revisionist history. It's the context that everybody wants to put things in. But if you want to put money on the Washington Commanders to beat the Philadelphia Eagles, I would probably take the points if I were you. You know, just it makes the pot a little bit smaller, but it gives you a little bit of a blanket to work with. If you want to take the Philadelphia Eagles, obviously you have all the reason in the world to do so. But, you know, I expect this game to be competitive one way or another. And it's important not to stat scout. Go look at the game flow of these games, and you'll see in each and every one of these quote unquote top matchups that the Commanders haven't won that they've been incredibly competitive in each and every single one of them.
And before I let you go, Dave, the last thing I wanted to ask you is the playoffs. So you think they're going to get in? And basically, do you think it really, they win one game? You think that's really all it's going to take?
Yeah, they basically need to win one game and they'll get in, because the way that the schedules work out, especially going up against the NFC West teams that are vying for the division title, but also a wild card spot. The Seattle Seahawks and Cardinals play each other. The Rams and Niners play each other. They're basically going to cannibalize each other. So for the Washington Commanders, you know, I'm not going to pitch this as it's officially official, like they only have to win one game, but from the math that I've done loosely, and I don't get into all the different scenarios, I don't get paid enough to try to do all those calculations. But from what I can glean, if they win one more game, whether it's this weekend, next weekend against the Falcons, or Week 18 against the Dallas Cowboys, they have a very good chance they should get in to the postseason. Now, obviously, you would rather not go to Dallas Week 18 needing to get that last win. So you would much rather have that come this weekend, and then you can start getting into playoff preparation mode. Bottom line, either way, you know, especially like you look at the Rams and the Seahawks, if they need to lose. If you win this weekend, the Falcons win, the Rams win, the Seahawks win. Next weekend you face the Falcons, so you can give them their loss. Rams and Seahawks have to face each other before the end of the season. One of them is going to lose.
Best opponent first round for Washington, you think?
I'm going to go to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Well, I'll say this. I'll go Tampa Bay Buccaneers right now. If Philadelphia Eagles win this weekend, I'm actually going to go Philadelphia Eagles in the playoffs, because it is really difficult to beat a team 3 times in 1 year. And it's actually funny. I was actually talking to another media member about this. The year that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won their Super Bowl, the New Orleans Saints swept the Buccaneers in the regular season. The Buccaneers went into New Orleans and won the playoff game on the way to the Super Bowl.
There you go.
So that's kind of the latest evidence you have to that. So if the Washington Commanders lose this weekend, I know it sounds weird, but if they lose this weekend, I'm actually going to tell you facing the Eagles in the first round is probably their best chance to get a win. If the Commanders win this weekend, I'll tell you that just because of injuries and some of the deficiencies we've seen creep up with the Buccaneers since that Week 1 matchup, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will probably be the best matchup. Plus, I mean, it would just be poetic. Jaden Daniels gets his first NFL start against the Buccaneers, gets his first playoff start against the Buccaneers. Come on. You know what I mean? You can't draw it up any better.
Yeah, taking a look at the standings, I guess in order for that to happen, Washington will more than likely they're going to have to get that 6th seed.
Yeah, they need the Packers to fall.
And they're only a game behind them. So, and they didn't play this year, right?
No, Packers and Commanders did not play. Look, as long as the Commanders don't have to go to an NFC West playoff game, I'm happy. Please do not make me fly to Seattle, San Francisco, or Phoenix for a playoff game. That's all I'm asking. Or Los Angeles.
Yeah. Tampa's nice though, right? And you covered them.
I love Tampa.
That would be an awesome matchup for you guys. That would
I mean, look,
be.
there's no bad answer here. I love Tampa.
No.
The link is always exciting. I've never been to Minnesota for a game period. The Lions, I was there to cover the Bucks Lions playoff game last year. That is an electric environment that I would not be sad to go back to. Plus, you know, me and my good buddy Marshall Mathers could catch another football game together, and you know, I'd be okay with that. So, again, no offense to Seattle, San Francisco, Arizona, or Los Angeles, but other than that, I'm good with any matchup they have.
David, appreciate your time as always. We'll have links in the description, so everybody check it out. Looking for David's content, his 5-day-a-week podcast, the Locked On Commanders. Easy links that you have to do is click that, and then you're right there, including, of course, how to reach your content, social media pages. So, David, looking forward to because it looks like Washington's headed to the postseason if all goes well, and if we're lucky to catch up with you before they kick off that first playoff game, that'd be great.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Dave.